NBS Frontline.
And we are saying enough is enough.
Leaderless, tribeless, and fearless. These were some of the adjectives used by protesting youth to describe themselves as they geared up for the anti-corruption march towards Parliament. Little wonder that police and other security officers had been deployed in full force, effectively closing off the roads leading to the August House. Despite the heavy deployment, a section of youths was determined to make good on their promise to march straight to Parliament to express their anger over endemic corruption. As always, these were arrested, bundled up, and some are now at Luzira, while the government insists that such demonstrations infringe on other people's rights. Whose rights exactly are those, and why do they trump the demonstrators' rights?
When you want to do what is lawful and what is your right, and you step on my right, somebody must come in between us. And that's how police comes in.
Those arguments have been made before.
If the president, who has urged Ugandans to join the fight against corruption, at the same time warns those who demonstrate against it, which Museveni should Ugandans pay heed?
How we can arrange, what do you call it? Amnesty. No amnesty. Very good. So you want blood?
We are going to help the president fight corruption.
These people are unfair and inconsiderate, and they should check themselves. We shall have no alternative but to check them.
Most importantly, if the youth are shunning political, tribal, and religious affiliation to unite against corruption and similar vices, what are the implications for the government?
What have I done? Are we just moving up?
I don't think they are winners in this.
This is The Frontline. NBS Frontline.
A very good evening and welcome to this edition of The Frontline. My name is Charles Mwangu Shampagi. It's described itself as leaderless, fearless, partyless, demanding for answers, demanding for action against corruption. Their target, the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda. I have seen some comments from some of our fans, some of the fans of this show, and some of the viewers talking about why we haven't invited one of the leaders of those young people. But who do we invite when the organization tells us it is leaderless? Who do we invite to come and discuss some of those issues? But I want to say that right from the beginning that we read the comments that you post on all social media platforms. We follow them, we respect them, and we are glad that you are able to give us feedback on the show. Tonight, we discuss the protests against the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda, but there are many questions to ask. Parliament, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament today was talking about out of 72 trillion Uganda shillings budgeted for the financial year 2024-2025, Parliament will receive less than 1 trillion shillings. That's about 1.4% of the entire budget. If you remove the money dedicated to debt servicing, because the money to Parliament fits under recurrent expenditure, you will have that budget go up to about 2% of the national budget. But the question is, why keep Parliament in the spotlight? Where does the rest of the money go? Who is consuming it? Who is turning attention to those areas? There are many questions that need to be many questions that need answers. We will discuss those on the show. But also, many of the young people were sent to prison yesterday. By the last time I checked, about 100 of them had been incarcerated. Just a handful were released on bail today, including some of the National Unity Platform members of Parliament who had also been arrested. Let's discuss those issues. How far can this movement go? What can it achieve? And what way is it fighting? Of course, you've seen the comments from the president about money from foreigners, imperialists, struggling to keep the imperialist agenda out of the discussion. Let me start with at the extreme end. This is a T man. The T has been struggling. Advocate and activist Edgar Tavaro. Very nice to have you, sir.
I'm a tea farmer.
You're a tea farmer.
I belong to.
How much is tea selling now? What's the price of a kilogram?
No, it's actually 110 shillings.
110 shillings?
Yes.
So how much does the picker take?
90 shillings.
How much?
So you're left with about 20 shillings. So
100, is that mathematics?
90 shillings and
you take 20?
120 shillings.
Okay.
And the average cost of production delivered at Mombasa auction center is between 90 cents and $1.20, and we are selling much below that. So it just doesn't make economic sense unless.
So what are you doing?
Unless you have a stimuli program, a Marshall program from government. It's a sector.
How did you miss out in the billions that were being doled out in the budget? You need only about 126 billion for the entire tea growing sector.
You remember on Labor Day in Fort Portal City, the president made his intentions clear that we should uproot it and grow other high-value crops. We thought that statement really needs. We need a rethink.
It costs a lot more to uproot an acre of tea.
If you know what it takes to plant tea. But thank you so much. I'm happy to be here, and given that I'm the youngest on the show, I think I'll represent Gen Z.
There you have it, the Gen Zs. You have your representative in Edgar Tavaro. We have from the NRM Secretariat, Director of Communication at the NRM Secretariat, the Honorable Emmanuel Lomala Dombo, former Member of Parliament, and we always emphasize former Commissioner of Parliament. Very nice to have you.
Thank you very much, Charles, and good evening, our viewers, and good evening, my fellow panelists. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and for the first time, I think in yellow. You know, we have just been having a very important day in the life of the Secretariat because we have lost a vice chairman of Karamoja region, the late ASPRO, Honorable Simon Peter Aleper, who government decided, the president decided that he be given an official burial. And today he laid in state in Parliament, and Parliament paid tribute in recognition for his contribution as a former Member of Parliament and currently as member of the Central Executive Committee of the NRM. We condole with members of the family, the people of Karamoja, members of NRM family, and all the people of Uganda whom Aleper served with dignity and dexterity. May his soul rest in eternal peace.
A very sad and tragic passing of the Honorable Simon Aleper. He just completed his bar course.
Yes.
Yeah, he had been studying.
At the LDC?
Yes, at LDC. He just completed.
He was my contemporary at Makerere for his first degree.
Let me introduce
96 to 99.
The Honorable Proscovia Salam Musumba. She was a Member of Parliament, a district chairperson, and a senior leader of the Forum for Democratic Change.
She was a commissioner.
Was a commissioner of Parliament.
Yes.
And now belongs to the Katonga faction of the FDC.
Parliament, was it? Political and, what was it? Presidential and Foreign Affairs Committee.
Presidential and Foreign Affairs Committee.
That problematic
once a very powerful committee.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be back on the front line. And out there, Ugandans, I bring you greetings from all over the places that we've been to, but particularly from the great city of Namwendwa, for which I'm the ambassador. And our condolences to you, Honorable Dombo, and the NRM fraternity on the tragic loss of a Gen Z. Being your contemporary. Yeah, because the cause of death needn't be. No, needn't be. And that speaks volumes of the road designs that you have successfully designed for us. Very narrow, very colonial, no lanes, no nothing.
No reflectors.
Nothing, just blind spots.
Yeah, sure.
Blind spots. And so it's really sad, tragic. Karamoja needs every human resource it can lay hands on, and kindly accept our condolences.
Last but not least, the Honorable Ibrahim Semujunganda, Shadow Minister for Finance. He represents the people of Kira Municipality. He's a member of the Frontline. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles.
We're going through some of the numbers that I presented earlier. The focus has been on Parliament. And let me start with the person who hasn't been on the show for some time to make sense of the demonstrations that we have been experiencing over the last few days, the mobilization that is largely done online, the fact that the demonstrators, whom government described as rioters and has been dealing with as rioters, describe themselves as leaderless, partyless, fearless. Can they really, a leaderless movement, a partyless movement, shake up and shape a conversation in this country about corruption? The Honorable Salam Musumba.
Well, the topic of corruption has been on the horizon for a long, long time. And it has only been energized by the exhibition, by the Agora, by the young people, because we have spoken about, and we have done a lot about corruption in our time. And it has only been met by deaf ears and lack of response, appropriate response. And so the young people are rightly doing what they need to do and what they must do, because it's their futures that are at stake. And when we were their age, we did the same. And so they're just right to do what they're doing. To describe themselves as leaderless and whatless?
Partyless.
Partyless.
Fearless.
They're fearless, and because they've just had it. They've just had it. And adults, of course, can't understand how young people get disgusted with what's been going on, the narrative and the non-action about all the mega robberies called corruption. And so the young people, they have my support, my full support.
Now, you're a commissioner, you're a member of parliament,
yes.
And voices from parliament have been asking and saying, you're focusing on parliament.
Rightly so. That's,
right.
That's the crime scene.
That's the crime scene?
Yeah, parliament is the crime scene. That's the place where all our money goes. Those are the.
How much money is going into parliament? They're saying
it
a lot more
matter.
money.
Listen,
a lot
they
more
miss
money
the
goes
point.
elsewhere.
They miss the point.
Absolutely.
They do miss the point. And please don't take us there because you annoy us, you irritate us. Don't go there.
Where should we go?
You have the power of the purse, if you remember that phrase. And you are the only organ of state that appropriates funds. And you choose to be the first to dip your hand in the kitty. So please, when we ask you to account, it is because you, of all organs of the state, of government, are the ones supposed to be asking what we are asking. When we earn less money than you do, in those terms, we executed our mandate as representatives, as the organ that had oversight, representation. All this, nothing has changed. It's you guys that have changed, that have slept on the job, that have done us so bad that you have given us a very, very bad name. I mean, the things that are being talked about, our colleagues, are really very ugly. They're not honorable. Yes.
You heard the comments of the president.
Yes.
He responded to the young people.
He didn't.
He
didn't respond. He's talking to himself. He's not talking to us.
He's talking about foreign money.
No,
he's talking about imperialist
He's the biggest
agenda.
beggar. He's the biggest beggar. He eats from imperialist hands. And he has fed us all the 40 years on imperialist money, taxpayers' money from the US, from Europe, from from UK, from all over the world. He's abusing the goodwill of people who have held our hand while we needed their help. To term them as imperialists is really very uncalled for, and he knows that they are not. And he needs, I think the time now is the wrong time for him to say those things, because at age 40 in power, you can't plead such petty things. Deal with the situation. Deal with the cumulative failure of governance, the cumulative failure of checks and balances, the cumulative failure of the fight against corruption. This corruption thing didn't start today. Dombo, you do recall, we fought corruption. We fought corruption. We did. Corruption didn't start yesterday. We have fought corruption.
You lost the fight, didn't you?
No, we never lost the fight. That's why we are a reference point.
Yes.
We are a reference point. We can tell you the robbers of the state, they walk in suits. The triggers, the ones that started this thuggery. And we are all having to pay for it. So, all of us Ugandans are duty-bound to fight this vice because it's gotten out of hand. I mean, when robbery gets to the budget, I mean, it's at the heart of our survival, of our competitiveness, of our viability as a nation. And so it's not a joke. That's why it must be partyless and ageless, because it does affect all of us, whether you're yellow.
The Gen X Edgar Tavaro. You're Gen X, aren't you?
Yeah, Gen X.
Yes, Gen X.
So is Honorable Semuju. Semuju is about two years older than me.
I'm already older now.
He's 50.
I think you still belong to the band of...
So is mine. My firstborn is a third-year student of law.
So you're not...
I've come of age.
So you can't be...
We can sit at the table.
You can't be Gen Z and your son is Gen Z.
No, I'm representing their interests.
Edgar, you've been watching what's been going on with these demonstrations, and like Honorable Salam Musumba says rightly, starting with the exhibition, the tempo has been sustained for some time. Very uncommon of this country that activism, especially run online, can be sustained like this. Though many people look across the board and say the demonstrations in Kenya have empowered, have kind of reinvigorated what has been happening in this country. The bigger question is Parliament the right target? Is it being targeted fairly? Is there ignorance? Are they ignoring other areas of grand corruption that should be in the spotlight?
There is a Luganda saying, and correct me if my Luganda is wrong. I'm not a native speaker. Which team? As the honorable member from Aringa, Aringa was saying, which team means a dishonorable person, the opposite. Now, I think the closest you can have in English is caught in the act, in flagranto delicto. So Parliament is in flagranto delicto, following the Agora online campaign, and citizens journalism has changed in many ways. Post-COVID, the world has changed. Many of us don't read newspapers, the hard copy newspapers. We get them online. Many of us do go on X, and well, it's banned, but we also still go there. Facebook, that's where we get our information, and that's where that's the platform that activists have been using. Now, I see a major disconnect between persons in the actors, state actors, and activists, in the sense that they are not as fast and as furious as the information that is coming from the activists. Many times the state is being caught off guard. Now, for the institution of Parliament, you shall recall that they attempted a spin, they attempted a response. But where the responses were made, they were arrogant, they were condescending, and many times dismissive. And the persons they chose to lead the PR campaign on behalf of Parliament, in my opinion, were not the best persons suited to respond to the avalanche of the information that was emerging from the Express, from Agora. Now, there is another disconnect. I see a big disjuncture between the state actors, persons in Parliament, and the Gen Z. The Gen Z, that generation is markedly different from, say, we, the Generation X. I was born in 1976. I'm turning 48 in November. I ran a law firm, KTA Advocates. And for a long time, we had been grappling with issues of culture and people. What we used to call, when Dombo started working in 1993, 94, used to call it personnel, later human resource. The vogue, the vibe now is people and what? Culture, referring to human resource. We had a very big turnover, and we had to commission. I'll be coming to address the point, Charles. We had to commission a study to find out why we had a big turnover of the Gen Z. And the results were stunning. One of the people we engaged, one of the smartest change management managers, experts in Uganda, Mr. Patrick Anyota, now the managing director of NSSF, he came and opened our eyes. Now, the Gen Z's mode and style, modus operandi of doing things, totally different. And there's a very huge disconnect between us and them. And unless and until we start making steps towards understanding them and incorporating them in the mainstream affairs of the state, we are going to continue running things in the manner in which we're running. One, the Gen Z have a common culture that is global. What other people are calling copycat. Copycat what? Copycat protests. For them, it's a global movement. For Gen Z, you know, you've heard of this song called by Mwaki and Zab, the collab between a Kikuyu and a Brazilian Portuguese. They've never met, but they produce a collab and becomes an instant hit in Southern America, becomes a hit in Africa. They've gone beyond borders. Issues that merit attention in Kenya certainly also merit attention in other parts of Africa, and more so for Uganda. The Gen Zs communicate through spaces that many of us are not in. TikTok, which is the one? TikTok. And the language of communication is very different from ours as well. So I'm surprised that the deputy speaker is sounding so much out of touch with this generation. They are in the spotlight. Information, there's an avalanche of information about what is happening in Parliament. These persons have developed tools of analysis beyond what we have ordinarily had. They are breaking barriers and have put it in our faces. Every day you wake up, the persons, you know, we've had trials going on of public officials who are involved in diverting funds meant for cooperatives. But the discussions that are ongoing, you don't see them militating in any of the discussions. Every day it's Parliament, and particularly the person who is leading Parliament. So, in that regard, the state actors will have to wake up. They'll have to engage with Gen Z. But I also read the statement of the president. You've made reference to it. There is talk that is gaining currency, and obviously it's not without merit. It's got its merit. In the Western capitals, they are suffering what we'd call fatigue with the presidency that has been around for nearly 4 decades. And some of the persons in these Western capitals have openly voiced for regime change. Now, there are also regime change agents here and about. Some of them are what would style unprincipled regime change agents. Those ones who want to change regime at any and at every cost. And I think I see a chasm of those persons who have legitimate interest or legitimate concerns to voice and protest against what we are seeing as malfeasance, what we are seeing as pilferage of the public purse. And there are persons who would like to use such platforms to further their regime change activities at any cost.
Thank you. Let me quickly come to Honorable Semo Jungana, and then I'll come to Honorable Dombo. You sit in Parliament. You've been at the center of this. The focus is on you as members of Parliament and Parliament as an institution. Some of you are saying, why focus on us alone? We're only taking less than $1 trillion out of 72 trillion shillings in the budget that's coming up. You're distracting from focusing on other areas that have grander corruption when you focus on Parliament. And how do you respond?
When you're Parliament, you can only feel bad that you have been the trigger, not because you are innocent. I think the World War, the causes, everyone who did history, what sparked off the World Wars were not the real reasons why it actually happened. I have been in demonstrations in school, at the university. Something small, or one thing can spark off a demonstration that, because even in Kenya, what sparked off the protests was actually the finance bill, the number of taxes that President Ruto was introducing. Eventually, all the issues that emerged during the protest emerged because the protests had themselves started. So you can feel bad that you become the issue that has sparked, but you cannot say, no, I am innocent. So the issues about Parliament are only helping people to start these sort of protests. And Parliament should be able to understand that. The point that the Honorable Taiwa, I didn't listen to him, was making, I think has been adequately answered by Honorable Sarah Musumba. If your duty is to stop others, and then you are yourself accused, because the accusation is not just because you receive part of the budget. And the mistake people make is to think that corruption is just about the money that is budgeted for Parliament. Some of the colleagues who are in prison are not accused of misappropriating money budgeted for Parliament, actually accused of misappropriating money budgeted for other things. So you cannot narrow the discussion to the budget of Parliament. The discussion is about the whole conduct of the institution of Parliament. And that's what we need to deal with as an institution. Because if you have MPs...
Are you ready to deal with it? Are you dealing with it?
I am not sure that we are ready to deal with it. It's not very easy to discuss yourselves. And that's why we need to allow the outsiders to discuss Parliament. Because first, if you are going to discuss the Speaker cannot chair Parliament. Because how would you chair a session and you are the subject of discussion? If you are going to discuss the Deputy Speaker, it means the Deputy Speaker cannot chair. It's just natural. So Parliament will need to allow to be audited by other people. And so this particular protest maybe is part of the auditing that we are not used to. So we'll eventually have to learn to deal with it. The protesters coming to Parliament, unfortunately, Mr. Museveni doesn't see this as a protest, I think, against Parliament. I don't think that Museveni is sympathetic that people are protesting against Parliament. And he has learned from what has happened in Kenya. Because in Kenya, they were even able to take over Parliament, cut out some of the material from Parliament, but after that, no, now, Mr. Ruto, even you must go. And I think that's what is bothering Museveni, not that, in fact, I saw, I hope that message I saw was a correct message. He said, if the protest is just a protest against corruption, I will also participate. He's, apparently the president has instructed Colonel Edith Nakalema to organize a protest against corruption at Kololo Independence Grounds, a ceremonial grounds, and he has said he will participate in that demonstration. No. I remember when Museveni was interviewed about, was it football? Why is your government not funding football? He said, you organize a match, I want to play football. And it was organized and he played. Yeah, did that solve the problem? I think his intention is to cause some drama in a matter that should be treated seriously. So Parliament, the leadership of Parliament and those of us who are in Parliament will need to understand the seriousness of this matter. Of course, the President keeps himself referring to the report of the Auditor General that over 9 trillion shilling is lost to corruption every year. If you pass, I think that's the Inspectorate of Government. Yeah, Inspectorate of Government. If those are the figures that are thrown in people's faces, you should be able to understand the anger. And that anger needs to be processed into action that are going to satisfy the public. And that's why Parliament is on a very big test, because you are yourself accused, but you also have a duty to call other people to order. The other day I saw the secretary, the accounting officer to the judiciary. Forgotten this man. This man was in the office of Prime Minister. Pius Bijirimana? Yeah. That he said, I cannot appear before parliamentary committees, that those fellows are corrupt, so they cannot summon me. I hope that what I saw was... He denied it. He didn't say it.
It was an online media that I think...
So yes, the talk is at Parliament, and Parliament entirely has a duty to clean itself. If it fails, it will be very difficult to call other people to order when you are yourself accused and you're a suspect. Honorable Emmanuel Lumala Dombo, for a long time, the government in which you serve and your leader, President Yoweri Museveni, has been, to borrow the word or the phrase, breathing fire and brimstone. Is that what they say, Edgar? Yes. Over the fight against corruption. As early as, I think, 2011, he's swearing in of 2011. That's when he first declared zero tolerance to corruption. 2016, yes, Kisanja hakuna mchezo, 2016. 2021, we're still struggling with it. Today, the president says, I want to congratulate the armed forces and the security forces and the wananchi for foiling or not participating in these demonstrations. And he puts their blame on imperialist forces. He puts the blame on foreign agenda. And people asking and saying, wait a minute, are we on the same side in this fight?
Well, one of the most difficult things to fight, I've repeatedly said here on this talk show, is corruption and obwenzi. And the reasons I gave is that the two may be very attractive to the people fighting them and those practicing it. And if you're not careful, it can easily compromise those who are supposed to fight it, and they get recruited at the same time as well. So corruption itself keeps changing face. Government has tried, like Honorable Salam Sumba has said, it was during this same NRM government. The president was the president when we were in parliament, and we did our work as members of parliament. We took bold decisions and...
censured visitors.
Other ministers were censured, other ministers resigned. CEOs of state enterprises resigned, and some were tried and put in jail. But progressively, every time, corruption keeps changing. Recently, I was in Mbale, and police did a post-mortem to a case that had a murder that had been committed. And when they brought the report from the medical to show what was the cause of death, when I read the report of police, they were still using a typewriter to type the forensics and the report from the medical. So I asked the police, I said, but why do you, in this era of the computer and the digital era, why do you use a typewriter? He says it cannot be hacked. Because whatever you type, it's basically, it types what you press. In the digital world right now,
It's not connected to anything.
it isn't.
Yeah.
In the digital world now, you are talking about faceless,
borderless,
crewless. You are talking about a world that there is no border. And you want to create control in a situation where the people mobilizing one another may be 1 million miles away from you.
Exactly.
And you are not seeing them.
Exactly.
Honorable Dombo government hasn't lifted the ban on Facebook. Are you aware?
Absolutely, I am aware, but,
Yes.
the
ban has been on since 2016.
But they circumvent that by doing so we're in a world that is complicated, and technology is going to play a bigger part than it did during our times.
But before you go into technology, Honorable Dombo, I mean, President Yoweri Museveni has been in charge of government for the last 38, going on 39 years. Corruption, as you say, has grown. You tried to fight it as a parliamentarian.
We were obstructed.
You didn't succeed. Now, what you see is that it has grown. If you look at the monies being complained about.
You expected corruption not to fight back?
It did, but it got a promoter. We can go case
Charles,
by case, UCB,
Charles,
UTL.
let me leave Salam Suma. The other day I was listening to a complaint from the Pope in the Vatican. And what those cardinals around him have been doing with the money in the Vatican. And these are holy people. Let me first of all remove.
No. In fairness, you can't run around and find excuses in Vatican, find excuses in Brazil, in Argentina.
Looking for help.
In the Bible and elsewhere, yes.
You are the one who is unfair. So
Unfair
you are
too.
asking Dombo to pass a judgment on his master.
I asked you to pass a judgment on your institution, where you sit.
Ours is a different institution. We all came by ourselves. But Dombo was offered a job by the man you are asking now to judge. Me, nobody brought me to Parliament except the people of Chira. So you are now asking him to explain, because the president says colonialist. So what do you want Dombo to say? That the president is lying? Or the president is... so he certainly can't say the things you're asking him to say. That's why he's going to Brazil and...
no, he's going to Vatican.
And the Holy See.
And then he will
The
be
Holy
in
See.
No,
Tanzania.
but Charles,
Yes.
I'm just emphasizing one thing, that corruption is a very difficult thing to deal with, especially in a changing world where the technology is equally changing. One of the shows, I think it was still Frontline, when we went for the Heroes Day in Mpenja, the fighters asked President Museveni. They said, for us, we could easily arrest the people who are stealing matoke. Other evildoers, it was very easy to deal with it because we had the guns and we could fight. We would volunteer and come and help you to fight corruption.
Yeah.
But that was Mr. Sedunga. And he said, but if we came with the guns and stood at the door, they tell us money has been wired. So they are waiting with a gun to shoot a thief. But the money that has been taken, they even don't know how it has been carried. It has been wired. Right now, money can go through a wire. Money can go through a network. So
that is the easiest way to track it.
So because of that,
Honorable Musuba, you can actually delete the trail.
No,
you can. There are technologies. Oh my!
Listen to me. If your firewall, if your controls are managed by the corrupt, you see.
But Dobbas just told you that it's very compromising.
See, let me tell you, if we continue talking this way, we worsen the situation, because I remember reading a tweet from a Kenyan young boy, doing it from a can, said, listen, we have blockchain technologies, we have this. I mean, he could read it off. And you are in analog, talking about things that do not make sense today. They made sense 20 years ago.
But Honorable Musuba, you've been, fortunately, you've been in district administration.
Yes,
some of the most compliant, for instance, procurements, are also some of the most corrupt.
If you ask me to tell you about the corruption, the districts are only a crime scene. The thieves are in Kampala.
You want to say,
Charles?
I'm afraid, members, we need to be taking a break. I'll come back to you, but let me take a message from James Bond. James Bond says, thanks for the program. All Ugandans are concerned about the level of impunity of the leadership.
Exactly.
The leadership is showing
impunity
in failing to combat corruption. All Ugandans want to riot against corruption, but they fear to be shot and arrested. Let us give the state all the support now that it has come out boldly and very seriously, even rearresting those who wanted to use court bail as an escape, as a scapegoat to fuel their corruption. James Bond. I also take a message from, let me see, someone here. Who's this? James. I don't know if this is another James. I think this I have read already. He sent it twice.
There must be something from Kavende.
Yeah, Michael Chakulaga in Bugerere Kayunga is watching the show, and he was sent the message. Beingana David says, the trillion you are talking of is probably the recurrent expenditure. But what the MPs are accused of is dipping their hands in other budgets as the appropriations agency. They are stealing at source. Different issue altogether. I think this is referring to the other 3 members of parliament who are incarcerated. It's amazing that people have seemed to move on. They've been there for quite some time, for the Honorable Namujus and others. James Salem is watching us and says, Ugandan politicians working for their own selfish interests should resort to using other domestic animals like cats, rabbits, sheep, or even monkeys, etc., to express their political grievances with our parliament and leave pigs alone. Pigs supply the most delicious red meat in Uganda, and is a delicacy to some Ugandans, while directly employing over 700,000 Ugandans in piggery farms, pork joints, logistics, bars, etc. Their rights should equally be respected. James Salimi, Chairman, Uganda Association of Pork Eaters, UAPE. Well, the pigs were thrown at... the piglets were thrown at... Let's take a break.
Frontline.
You're still watching the Frontline on NBS TV, and we're discussing this leaderless, partiless, fearless movement of Gen Zs. We actually need to find some time to discuss young people and their struggles. At what points? If you look back, like we're discussing during the break, all movements all over the world, all the time, the leaders have been young. People forget that
the same age
bracket. Same age bracket. When President Museveni became president, I think he was 43 years old.
42.
42. When Dr. Kizza Besigye...
to the Bush at 37.
Yes, at 37. When Dr. Kizza Besigye offered himself to be president of this country for the first time, he was 42. Around 42.
But at the time he went to the bush, he was about
by the time, yes, at the time, he went to the bush when he was in his 20s. At 25. General Mugisha Muntu became CDF at 29. The Kazonas and the Tumukunde.
His story is that after the final paper, so at that time they used to read the names already. Their names were read when they were in the bush.
So we need to have a discussion about what is unique about the young people of today.
But the young people of today are markedly different.
What is different?
What is different? Yes, what is different?
What is different?
Yes.
Dombo was still answering whether these particular protests were sponsored by imperialists. So we need.
That's
we don't need to disturb
yes.
him.
That's the area which I wanted.
So let him first.
That's the area which I wanted to
because he was talking about.
Charles, when you look at the civil revolt, this was like a civil revolt by young people. It first happened in Kenya. And when you look at the findings of the Kenyan government, it's not any different from what President Museveni has tweeted. Because something is faceless and borderless, but behind it, it has leaders.
Kenya was accusing force.
Because behind it,
Rather recklessly, President Ruto mentioned before.
Behind it, there are leaders who are specifically have an objective, and it has players. But because when these revolts started in the Eastern countries, at that time, because of repression, if somebody identified himself as a leader, he could either be compromised or he can be incarcerated. But because of technology, it has enabled people to do mobilization without bringing out their face, and yet they have the same impact.
Is the president being fair to these young people? Because I have taken a good look at, and anybody who has read Sowing the Mustard Seed. I mean, the president talks in Sowing the Mustard Seed about the support he received from other foreign leaders, including the president of Tanzania. The family was in Egypt, Gaddafi, the people who provided sanctuary to families of the revolutionary fighters were not in this country. So is that a fair?
Let Kiruda in Austria. Where was it? Mobilizing in Austria, Mama Mbabazi.
You know the question.
Yes.
The question now you are tackling.
Papua New Guinea and all over the world.
The question you are now raising is a question of ideology. That even when those people extend assistance from the foreign countries, what does it intend to achieve? Because first of all, President Museveni talks about slave traders. There was slave trade. This is a fact. Two, there have been a lot of machinations on the African continent propagated by the same people who don't want Africa to emerge out of this so that Africa can continue being a market for the raw materials.
I think to be fair to President Museveni, he was referring to the economic relations that have defined the West and the emerging nations like we have.
And my question goes back to the same thing. What is different? What is different?
Just a quick one. He made reference to intelligence-led.
Yes.
Intelligence-led. I mean, Charles, we do interact with many of these people from those spaces. President Museveni has made it the cornerstone, I think, of maybe his next election bid, that he's pushing for political federation of East Africa. What do they call it, variable what? Geometry of having the coalition of the willing going for political federation, and the others may follow later. Now, when they brought DRC on board, when they quickened the process of admitting DRC, even quite frankly, I mean, they scattered many of the issues that wouldn't have qualified them. It posed a very big threat to some of these so-called powers that created enclave economies. At independence, 3% of Africa contributed 3% of the international trade. It's dropped to 2. Yet 85% of the commodities, rather 85% of the raw materials that drive international trade, 85% from Africa. So they want to make sure, that is the belief, that they want to make sure that Africa continues to be a provider of raw materials and the least persons participating in international trade. Now the East African Federation, it is believed, will be emerging as the center of gravity in Africa in a multipolar world, and therefore pose a threat to some of these plunderers. So
don't you think that in the same spirit, a very committed fight against things that hold back that building of a center of gravity should be taken more seriously.
Exactly, it should
Yes.
be taken seriously and address particularly
Yes.
that part of the population that has
So-
genuine grievances. I'm with you on that.
Isn't a reference to say, yes, I have heard it and very well understandable that, for example, the law that Parliament passed, the Anti-Homosexuality Act,
Yes.
has, you saw the debate in the UK House of
Parliament.
Commons. House
Was
of,
it Lord? Was that
House of
Lord?
Lords.
House of
Yes.
Lords? He even mentioned his preferred president
yes.
for Uganda.
And the discussions internationally have had an impact on what discussions are happening in Kampala now.
Yes, that's right.
And the individuals being mentioned, the speaker and her role, it's provided a convenient space.
Avenue.
Yes,
for them
avenue to explain away certain things that should otherwise be addressed. How do you deal with those in a multipolar world, you said?
A multipolar world.
In a world facilitated by all these technological developments?
All said and done, Charles, we are going to have to tackle impunity in this country. And we shall have to deal with it in a bipartisan manner.
George Muhimbis is watching us and has a very interesting take. He says, returning the budget to Parliament at a time when some MPs were being arrested for alleged corruption was an attempt by the President to hold Parliament at ransom so that he can easily get money to projects where he has interest. Secondly, the President wants to blackmail Parliament so as to achieve political capital. He has demonized Parliament as a corrupt institution when there are other MDAs that have a lot of corruption. Institutions like police or judiciary have always ranked among the most corrupt, but he has never acted on it. He says, I don't know if you're being fair, George, I think there was a probe on corruption in the police many years ago. And
there have been changes.
There have been changes there. Lastly, if the President is genuinely fighting corruption, he should first account for billions that went to the
We have a new IGP.
Lubowa project at Yakshuga, among others.
So that we audit him.
George
And by the way,
Muhimbise.
Honorable Musumba.
I think
Honorable Semuji.
Yes, hold it.
Just
yes.
a quick one,
So
because we are talking about police. Police is coming on spot. I think in the most recent times, police, I see the president praising police for having acted professionally. I think there's improvement. In the past, protests like this would have been gathering bodies and persons weeping as a result of mishandling
Yes,
the violence. I think there's great improvement.
I want to make
There is great improvement,
make
Salama.
2 points. The first is a standard accusation by Mr. Museveni. We've been accused of being agents of foreign interests as political parties. When you have people demonstrating on the street, they will accuse VCJ that he has hired them. And Museveni will say, even as evidence, in his mind, he wants to create a narrative that people have no they have no legitimate issues to raise, but they are just being sponsored. They are mercenaries. They are being sponsored by other people to protest. And I think that's why he deliberately makes reference to food. That you guys, you have food which is cheap. Why are you even protesting? So he wants to project a situation of satisfaction in the country that actually other people are just exploiting young people. Because in the past, they were accusing us of exploiting young people who have no jobs. So he does this deliberately.
Is he just doing it deliberately? Because if he has actual intelligence information that indicates it slipped out of the Kenyan president's mouth to mention a particular foundation, the Ford Foundation.
Yeah, but you see, Charles,
yes,
I have been in the media associations. Us and Museveni go to the same people to look for funding. I have read some media associations. You go to the Swedish, you go to the Americans to look for the same funding that is not available in Uganda. It's not because you're asking them to come and sponsor you because they have an agenda. Sometimes actually that funding is not even available. So where Museveni goes is where everybody goes, because that's where there is a bit of money that they can. So the same way they sponsor the state, it's just obvious. That's where people go to look for employment. They go to Europe, they go to the Middle East. So if I want money for a seminar, I am not going to go to Dombo. I am going to go where Museveni also picks money to construct roads. And the point you made earlier is where but these particular protests are not the first of its kind in Uganda. And the accusation of Museveni has remained standard, that each time people are raising voices, is going to accuse foreign influence. But the second point I wanted to make is that I think Museveni is trying to be wise. The legitimate concerns about Parliament, Museveni wants to use them as a cover-up, because if you have people who have taken on Parliament, why? I don't think that Museveni should necessarily join. Let him deal either with corruption holistically or deal with other institutions that are not in the spotlight. But as if he's also competing for a sound bite. Every day speaks about Parliament at every moment, including the examples that Dombo was bringing, that he said Dunga, the fighters said they want to come and help. When an investigation was done in UPDF, they were stealing 600 billion per year. You remember the story of Stephen Kashak, brigadier.
And he sacked them.
Then they come back, like the ministers. He even has convicts in his cabinet. Yeah, for me, I don't want to waste time on
But the
Museveni.
convicts serve their time.
Does it matter?
Does it change the fact?
So when you are looking for people to inspire and serve you, so for you, you will get convicts.
Oh, if you're talking about inspiration, that's
So
a different
in your
issue.
farm, you look for convicts. They are the only available.
No, I think he's speaking as a lawyer.
Yeah.
That if you have served your punishment, then that's...
So they bring you a person, this one
has just killed another.
fresh from Ruzira after stealing. He has served 2 years. So that's the person you want to employ, Charles. That he has just finished his sentence after stealing 2 years. He has his back.
But the opposition had...
And for you...
You had Seya, let's say, who was a convict from the...
Seya was a presidential advisor.
Yeah, but not just that.
Maybe the only reason...
Seya was their lead campaign manager.
Hold it, Edgar.
By the way, when you're speaking about Museveni, Museveni likes working with those people. This Magora you see here, the one who has just been given 700 billion shilling. You remember his story? Him and Musumba and Mawanda, they were arrested in India.
They were not convicted.
But when they got the money, because that guy went to court.
Yes.
When he came with the 50 million US dollar, 20 million went to NRM. And when I say NRM, you know what it means. Eventually, he realized that this guy, I think he's good in cutting deals. So we started a pharmaceutical and vaccine factory together. So far, we've given him, when Sudiri was arrested at the airport, where did he end up? Isn't he the one who's doing all government deals here? So it is deliberate that you profile and demonize, because Museveni likes demonizing every effort. Every effort is not genuine, is not legitimate, but it is foreign sponsored. So that when he deals with you as people who have no original agenda, but you are carrying and shouldering interests of other people. But also the point which I want to emphasize again is that when you have a matter like the one of Parliament, it will give him room to walk away from other problems of impunity, because every day people are demanding. I am told he has now deployed UPDF to go and construct the hospital in Uruboa. I don't know where impunity went. But it gives him a breather. So he walks away from Pineti, he walks away from Amina of Atiak, and then he also begins making alarm. Can you imagine that Museveni wants to organize a demonstration?
Yes.
And he says, Nakalema organize one.
Can a deflection approach to dealing with these pertinent questions deal with the problem? Because when you take it back to demanding, to saying, yes, Mr. President, you also have issues.
Deal with those issues.
Deal with those issues.
If these ones who are dealing with the Parliament, they can deal with it. And you also deal with others.
Parliament is playing a deflection game.
Just play a complementary...
You're playing a deflection game.
Just play a complementary role. But Museveni wants to walk away from every corruption scandal,
but Charles,
to begin making noise also around the Parliament.
But Charles, first and foremost, you know that even creating the environment fight against corruption, there has been a tremendous improvement during this era. when you look at the structures of government that have been set up, when you look at the laws that have been enacted, and when you look at the facilitation through the parliament, the amount of money that has given to the anti-corruption agencies, and when you look at the conviction rate, when you go to Luzira, right now, so many people have been convicted.
Even
so
the cause list for the anti-corruption court
is huge. So that shows you that the agencies of government,
the busiest court now.
The agencies of government are working. The laws are, but what has happened in Parliament, it is something that is regrettable. And when Honorable Semiju talks about Museveni being deflective, he's deflecting it in order to basically to show Parliament that's worse off. The current report, where members of Parliament are being arrested, it was not investigated by the IGG. The investigation was done by Parliament. The Parliament investigated itself through a committee of Parliament.
They're not investigating itself. During the course of investigation.
So they discovered that they have fallen below the standards. And then Parliament would not prosecute itself or the members of Parliament. That is a responsibility of the executive. The DPP, who is part of the executive. So when the executive do their work, out of the work findings of Parliament, again, you can't blame President Museveni that because he has seen this and he wants to portray Parliament negatively. This is something that corruption is bad, we all agree, and let everybody try wherever from their vantage point to ensure that we fight corruption. But one of the biggest problems, like other panelists have said, one of the challenges that comes out is the level of impunity in certain offices that should have taken action or that out of impunity would consistently abuse their offices or abuse authority without action being taken.
Ambassador Harold Achema is watching us from Arua. He's an ex-Foreign Service officer. He says the gross violations of human rights and fundamental freedoms of patriotic Ugandans taking place, especially in Kampala, in broad daylight, with impunity this week, reminds me of the saying that the more things change, the more they stay the same. What a pity, what a tragedy. Ugandans deserve a lot better. Ambassador Harold Achema, he is in Arua city.
But Ambassador Achema should have noted that what happened recently during this demonstration is far much different from what happened
There's a great improvement
during the Chakulanya.
Absolutely no improvement. The only reason was that you are now dealing with a fairly smaller number. The demonstration of November 2020.
November was an insurrection, not a demonstration.
It was a demonstration.
It was an insurrection.
It was a protest because
Defined
of the
by
way.
you?
It was an insurrection.
But when I was saying, you know what happened to the journalists who attempted to go to the Human Rights Commission? How many were they? When they were clobbered by the police?
It was actually military police. It was military police, not
if they were clobbered, they were less than 100. So you cannot say that because these ones who demonstrated recently were fewer.
That was even better. Because the ones who are demonstrating in November were
I'm going to ask a question to Honorable Salam Musumba, but let me take a message from Christine in Fort Portal, who says, according to what happened at NUP offices where piglets were written on Joel, that has reflected what Crantes Miguel said, that the rich widow cries with one eye and rejoices with the other. I haven't read what Crantes Miguel said. But
what was NUP intending to achieve with that press conference?
Is that your business?
And why didn't they have it?
No, they wanted to hijack a legitimate.
Let me ask, what business of it is yours?
Partless.
So if it was partless, then what was the problem?
Yeah, because they were
you see,
no.
So
Honorable Salam, I was asking to get questions.
Police was
not really
because they wanted
the kind of
replies.
replies. No, come on, I'm not justifying. I'm not justifying any excesses that were executed against the persons there. I've only asked, what did they intend to achieve? Because these protests are supposed to be partless. Let the Gen Zs.
Come on.
Honorable Salam Musumba, let me come back to you. The president here says he wanted to congratulate the armed forces, the security forces, and the Wananchi for foiling or not participating. when you look at the numbers, yesterday, today, you wouldn't describe this as a successful demonstration, even with the police or the security forces.
Again, you missed the point. The response that the announcement invited just cost the military deployment. Cost it. How much do you think it cost to roll out all that machinery? Shutting down the entire city. How much did it cost? I mean, apply new tools of analysis. Cost it in money terms, in monetary terms. How much did it cost this country to deploy police, to deploy the army, to deploy the intelligence, to deploy the borders, because they too operate as work as operatives. They are the eyes and ears of the state. Cost it.
They call it statecraft.
Yes, okay. Call it statecraft. Cost it.
This is the hard power of the state and the soft power of the state. Listen, so they were rolling out the hard power.
The hardware that was rolled out, what was it responding to? The measure of the threat was that high. So please don't miniaturize.
So who was measuring the threat?
The state.
You are measuring
No, the state. If you have the tools I have, analytical tools, not just talking. If you have analytical tools and use them, what they were responding to. Because if somebody sees no threat, they would be plain-clothed officers. You won't roll out all that
Charles, the state,
out of nothing.
The state was responding. You know, these demonstrations have not started in Uganda. They have been elsewhere, and
they started in Egypt.
And have led to the fall of government. And if anything happened, in Uganda, and there are people who could have been killed, everybody would now be blaming police. That where was the intelligence? Why didn't they act? Why didn't they come up early to ensure that they deploy the state assets, which they approve in Parliament, the 7 Jews approve in Parliament? So, if this has happened and there is no death, I think the president becomes right to congratulate the people and the security.
There is a counter-argument to that question, that in countries that are tolerant of freedoms of expression,
like which one?
You respond in a different way.
The Americans, when President Trump tried to overturn the elections of Joe Biden, what happened at the Capitol Hill?
Was it a demonstration?
Some people died.
It was a demonstration.
It was actually not a demonstration. It was a riot.
And it was
violent.
People died.
For so long as a protestant.
But who knows how?
At what stage do members of the security forces determine that this has turned into beyond a demonstration to a riot?
I mean,
how do they respond?
A riot is violent by its nature. So the state, particularly the police, it's incumbent upon the police, one, either to prevent or stop the escalation of the violence.
Okay.
But I would like to draw parallels, Charles.
Yes.
In 1989, I was a little boy doing my P7 at Nakasero Primary. We did have live coverage of the news on UTV. But later, I think on Thursday, we used to have the World Panorama broadcast by, you remember Shamim Kenkwanzi?
On UBC?
On UBC, no, UTV at that time, Uganda Television. You remember Tiananmen Square, you were at university.
Yeah, he was.
June the 5th, the students, the Gen Z of the time, the young people of the time, protested, and the protests turned violent. They turned violent mainly as a result of the state's what? Reaction. But there's that iconic picture. You remember the unidentified young man who went and stood in front of a tank. You remember? There's that iconic picture. Actually, it was smuggled out by an AFP journalist who took it. Stood in front of a column of tanks, approaching him, stopped it, and they all obeyed this young man. But he was eventually, I don't want to say much more against the Chinese state, but I'm told.
The tanks rolled over.
Even that you fear.
No.
1989.
Not that I fear. I mean, we're talking about state relations here. I mean, I do not have the...
Tiananmen Square is a historical fact. You can't change.
Yeah, it's a historical fact.
Yes.
But how did the state react after that? And I think that is the discussion I would like us to focus on when speaking about the response to the plight of the Gen Z. How did the state? No, the reform of the Chinese state from then on, they had to redo and rework the state policy of China, addressing the issues of that population. All of these developments and the fast-paced economic progress and infrastructure.
You could just hold it a moment. I want to go back to Honorable Salam Musumba, but
I'm particularly addressing Mr. Dombo, Honorable Dombo, who is representing the ruling party.
Okay. Joachim Buemba, I have a message from him. He says California has 120 legislators who each earn $7,000 a month and oversee a $330 billion budget, which is 25 times bigger than Uganda's, but whose MPs earn twice as much as California's. And Uganda's MPs number over 4 times more. So we spend 8 times more money to pay MPs than California, which has 25 times more money than Uganda. Let's take a break. We'll pick this up in a moment.
Frontline.
You're still watching the Frontline on NBS TV, and we're discussing faceless, fearless, partyless, and now from the arguments here, borderless, the youth demanding for answers on the fight against corruption. An interesting response from the president, and I've seen people drawing parallels between what the president said when he was marking his achievements at Kololo a few days ago, and the statement is given today, which someone claims is contradicting. But we're talking about, I think it's Edgar who was asking about when a demonstration turns into a riot. Laban Muhawe is an ex-police officer.
And he was the commandant of the VIP, is it
VVIP.
VVIP. Yes.
He quotes section 67 to 69 of the Penal Code Act and says lawful assembly, and this is what defines lawful assembly and riots. And he says in section 67, subsection 2, it is immaterial that the original assembly was lawful. And in section 69, if force is used on protesters and there is harm or death, there is no criminal liability or civil proceedings against the police. So he's warning the protesters.
Against the police officer.
Yeah, the police officer.
We have new laws on torture, where they create civil liability for the person who has inflicted that pain. The world is changing, and by the way, this movement is going to produce new laws, and they are going to internationalize some of these crimes that are domestic.
But just for
Andrew Irumba is saying Ugandans are protesting against corruption, manifesting itself in His Excellency President Museveni's government. Now, Mr. Museveni wants to organize the protests for them via Kanona Kalema. This is real politics, because citizens are supposed to be asking for answers from him. Now he's going to be among those asking for answers. How do you like that smarter politician? He's a smarter politician.
Chelsea, I don't want us to lose the response of the state and an attempt to justify. We need to discuss this in the context of what has been taking place in the country. The other day, the National Unity Platform was stopped from holding rallies, just holding rallies. And they said the reason.
They said the coronary strip is.
And they said that the reason they were stopping them, there was an accident when they were going to Masaka. So because there was an accident, no rallies. I went to meet people who were affected by the recent threat of eviction by NEMA in my constituency, far away from town. And they told me, you cannot meet them. We are actually supposed to be meeting in an enclosed place. What police did was to come and close it. And then later on, they arrested me that I am staging a meeting in the middle of the road.
There's a man called Johnson Mugume. He says when you were arrested there at Kasokoso, you lost your white handkerchief and he kept it.
So Mr. Museveni and his government will want to determine how much competition that people are staging against them. Even the competition itself will be characterized as right, because if you stop political parties from holding rallies, in all these, many of the FDC consultations we have carried out, we are in northern Uganda, in Gulu, we are told, no, you can't pass through the middle of the town. We are taken somewhere, see, that's where you should pass. In Masindi, they fired tear gas, they beat some of the boys. So someone who will not allow a simple civic meeting in the Masindi, and you'll be met by tear gas and chiboko. Why do you think that person will allow a demonstration in Kampala?
But
it will be easier for Dombo and all the state people who are employed by this family rule to come here and say, you know, when it was in Kenya, it was a riot. When it was here, then they wanted to remove a government. I don't know which government sits in Masindi that went to remove. Which government sits in Gulu in Kasokoso that I went to remove. So you don't need to discuss this matter. You need to discuss it in its own context. How does Mr. Museveni respond to competition? These particular protests, he sees in them, because you see, once you have younger people who are energized and they are, because you see, you now have a little bit of university graduates who are saying, please, no, we cannot accept this. And Mr. Museveni thinks that if you allow them, they may metamorphose into some sort of a movement and a campaign that you may not stop. Not that it's going to be dangerous, that you are going to, the following day, be working to remove a government, but they are going to encourage others to say no to government. What you do is you deal with them as agents of foreign interest. You beat them, you arrest them, because the idea is...
Your presiding officer argued, and I think his argument has some merit. He said, we have not received notification that a petition is being delivered at Parliament. So we couldn't organize or create a pathway for the demonstrators to come to Parliament because they're not coming to deliver demonstration, to deliver a petition. No. This is the argument I'm trying to raise, and I need you to respond to it. The argument that Article 43 of the Constitution provides for general limitations to enjoyment of particular freedoms and rights. Isn't it fair that in conducting the demonstration, that the respect for other people's rights who are not participants in that demonstration are respected and observed?
So whose right was violated?
So, no. The argument by the security forces in the deployment, they say that we have intelligence information that this could turn into...
That's what I have told you, that I went to Kasokoso, one of the villages in my constituents, to meet people who are issued with threats of eviction. And they told me, we have intelligence. First of all, they said, you did not notify us. I asked police, if you didn't know, why are you here? Then they abandoned that. They said, there are some wrong elements that want to cause problems. I said, why don't you arrest those wrong elements? Said, anyway, there will be no meeting here. But I heard the soldiers, as they were arresting me, they were saying, you want to bring Kenya here? You want to bring Kenya here? So the security apparatus that are now under family rule, under Museveni's son, are fighting for the survival of that family, because that's why they have assembled them. That we guys, you are under threat, you must confront it. It does not matter whether that threat is immediate or it is a state that will grow maybe in the future.
Other Gen-Zs,
so the response of the state is an embarrassment.
Would you say that the Kampala demonstrators can replicate or are doing what the Kenyans are doing, can sustain their...
You see, the difference between, difference between us and Kenya, we will need to summon all the courage and all the energy. Because in Kenya, you're not dealing with a family and private state. In Uganda, you are dealing with a military family rule. The response is certainly going to be different, because you saw Ruto complaining that why isn't police doing this? Why is even to deploy the military, he has to seek permission. And midway, court said, no, that permission now is withdrawn. Here, I think they will be in their bedroom, and the father will tell his son, we are under threat. The son will say, don't mind, daddy, tomorrow I'll go and show them. The same things you saw in Libya. When Gaddafi and his son, you didn't even know whose command you will take. When they were saying, you cockroaches, we are coming to fumigate you. The son was backing orders, Gaddafi was backing. We are not in a different situation.
Honorable Salam Musumba, I'd like to come to you, and Honorable Number come to you in a moment. What is the sustainability of these demonstrations?
Dissatisfaction will always fuel. If nothing changes about service delivery, about impunity, it will grow legs, it will grow limbs, and it will grow mileage. It is inevitable. It is only a law of nature that people will not accept a situation like obtains today forever. It can't happen. That's why President Museveni went to the bush. He forgets. I don't know how a freedom fighter forgets that fact. And so it is not about to stop. And the trajectory I foresee, there's that group and their brothers and sisters out there in the villages cutting sugarcane. They have been weaponized.
They've been weaponized?
They've been weaponized. And you don't want to hear this because you are in offices that are air conditioned. You don't live.
We're in a bubble. We're living in a...
You are. And so my worry, and I worry because I have seen all governments collapse in my lifetime.
All?
All.
Not about the one.
I was there.
How old?
Please, Edgar.
You don't know how old I am.
I have my deepest apologies.
And so, this looks like one on the exit.
Do you find merit in the argument that people raise that Uganda belongs to us?
No.
So, dealing with...
Listen, Ugandans are working hard to express themselves because they have no other country. And so they must wrestle power out of those who feel more entitled to it than the rest of us. And my biggest worry is that we are going into warlordism. And that's the architect, the political architect we are moving into.
The argument raised by members of the security forces, members of the government in power, is that, yes, you might have legitimate concerns, but we are deploying to make sure that we prevent destruction. We prevent
You see, you want
violence.
to get us used to hardware rolling out. One day it will roll out and never go back. One day.
You meaning
because I tell you,
the security forces will join the demonstrators?
Even the security forces have issues. They have issues, and legitimate issues. One day, and I hate for this to ever happen.
But that would depend on the command structure.
Listen, the other day when there was supposed to be a coup.
Which day?
When the president was in Rwanda.
Chogam?
In Rwanda.
Chogam, yeah.
Yes. That coup was stopped just at the 11th hour.
Because of the intelligence?
No, because somebody refused to take a command.
General Oro?
Yes, he did, and I gave it to him. He saved us. And so, I'll let you know what I know and even know more. So please, let us be normal leaders of our age, what our heads. Now, if you allow dissatisfaction to foment beyond this equilibrium, this level, this saturated, I mean, you are walking into you are walking into an abyss
But
that
Honorable Musumba, we've had those statements from you from the time you
don't take
reformed
it. Don't take it from me, because this government has not become better. It becomes worse by the day.
Honorable Musumba, don't mistake me for just prodding you.
Yeah.
We want to establish. We are trying to ask what is right for Uganda, and I think that's the question we should be.
And listen, this is the passion I have. I am asking, how do we fix ourselves? And you say, no, all is well.
No,
all is not well. All is not well.
I've considered that we are living in a bubble.
All right.
We are living in a bubble, and that we may be detached from the larger populace. Yeah. I've considered to that.
Yes.
But I think you're sounding alarmist when you say that,
and please,
that we are heading forward.
Listen,
that is my submission.
Listen, if we do nothing about the present issues being raised and those that have accumulated over the years,
what can be done? We will descend into warlordism like we had in 1985.
What can be done? What can be done?
As we were candidates.
Hold it a moment.
Charles, as we were candidates, during the 1985 peace accord in Nairobi, there was a clause. Actually, there was a whole provision in the schedule for a peacekeeping force to be led by Canada, Kenya, Tanzania, and Britain. Do you mean we're going to go back to that situation?
And what has changed? Your professionalized army, how does it work?
Honorable Musumba, you have...
Don't take my word. You will wake up dead.
You have...
we are all going to die.
More than 5 members of parliament in prison, answering to charges of corruption that the demonstrations are trying to deal with. You have a permanent secretary incarcerated. You have other technical officials in prison at the moment. What can be done? When you say if we don't respond, what exactly do you mean? What kind of response?
With technology today, you can follow the money. If you asked the Gen Zs to profile for you, to let the assets speak for themselves, because they know even better than you who owns what, who goes to supervise the assets when. So they know who has which money. You know, I have a son that comes, tells me, Mommy, you're the only one who doesn't have money. The guys are loaded.
You have no money?
I don't.
Then you haven't met people who have no money. Come to the tea estates and see what is happening there.
Honorable Manuel Dombo. Honorable Manuel Dombo, I need to come in here.
Charles, I wanted to respond first of all to Honorable Semujunganda. You know, the state has a dual responsibility of creating an environment for those who are competing with it, but at the same time, it has the most important responsibility of keeping the situation calm so that those who want to enjoy or do business within the country can do it. At times, that one is likely to be misunderstood, because how do you control, but amongst the people you control are those who are competing with you? It's likely to be, but when you look at the statements that have been stated by the people who usually associate with the Honorable Semuju, people have come up openly to say President Museveni will not finish off this term. President Museveni is going before the end of this year. President Museveni, this is going to happen. Now, if the people you associate with are the same people who are trying to galvanize the young people or to create a meeting without knowing what exactly is going to come out of that meeting, if you have that your responsibility of maintaining law and order, what would you do in order to create peace and harmony within the country? That's a question that you would only answer if you've been in government tomorrow, and then we see your capabilities and how you do challenge or how you deal with those who are opposed to you. But what is true is that the population expects us to react and act on the issues that affect the population. I attended the leaders' retreat, which happened in Chankwanzi recently. And when you look at the questions that were being asked in that meeting, it was an introspection. Leaders from the party, leaders from the cabinet, leaders, the technical arm of government, made to say, we have a mandate, we have a manifesto we promise people, we collect people's taxes, we must deliver services. Why isn't the service reaching the population? And I was surprised at the answers that came up. Because, first of all, corruption One of the resolutions which was taken in Chankwanzi, it was put in the media the other time. Somebody asked a question, why should there be procurement? And the cost of a bag of cement in the Ministry of Defense is different from Mulago Hospital, is different from Butaleja District, and all these are procurements under the same government. Why don't we have a unit cost of materials that are supplied?
Who are you asking?
No, this was an introspection. We are finding a solution to the challenges that are failing service delivery. So as the Gen Zs try to demonstrate on that side, I want to assure them that this side, government is working to plug some of the loopholes that have been creating these problems.
It's not really
and that's the argument some people are raising.
Service delivery. Yeah. I and Charles are from the same county, Bray County. The road we use, Kampala-Fort Portal Road, the road between Mitiana and Mubende has been undergoing reconstruction for how many years now?
About 7 years.
7 years. Believe me, it has nothing.
Work has actually been suspended.
Suspended.
There's no money now.
And there's no money now. Is that corruption?
Perhaps.
It's just impunity. It's just impunity. It had a timeline. If you can't do things within that timeline, please pack your bags and go.
What is the risk that there's a mix of both, impunity and corruption? I mean, they are symbiotic.
They don't necessarily go hand in hand. Sometimes impunity is appointing the wrong people in the places.
You raise a very critical point of critical question and a point of reflection you had at the retreat, and that's what part of the argument that has been. Parliament doesn't engage in the procurement you're talking about, at least to the level that you're talking about it, and saying, well, the focus now is on Parliament. But look, you use a good example, a bag of cement, quoted at different rates by different entities that are supposed to be implementing and providing service delivery.
Yeah,
so who should be answering those questions?
I think when the procurement law came, when Parliament with the Honorable Salam Sumba, when this current procurement law, which looks at processes other than looking at the outcome, because you can do a procurement and 100% all the processes are clear. But when the value for money out of the procurement is totally zero. And now, government is looking back to say, how did we reach here and what should we do? I'll give you an example. One of the things, again, which came up in the retreat, the Secretary of the Treasury made a presentation about the non-performing loans. All, from 1 to Z, and said, this is the amount of money, this is the loan that was affected, and this is the level of implementation, and this is the reason. But you do come to wonder and ask, how would a parliament, which was enjoined in the procurement process of the loan, to say that parliament will approve? How was this loan procured? It went through the ministry, it went through the Parliament of Uganda, and the execution after 10 years is about 15%. Why? Because people are only interested in the procurement activities of the loan, and once those were done and people got their cut, the implementation of the loan collapsed.
Yes.
And now,
but who should be answering? Who should
be
answering those questions? Because if the generation of the loan request is by the executive, there is pressure on Parliament to approve those loan requests. It approves the implementation. The entity that receives the money.
Let me give you examples. Yes.
Now, who gives the pressure to Parliament?
So what is supposed to? Let me answer. I mean, who's supposed to answer to?
When they brought a request for construction of a super specialized hospital, even the agreements had been signed. They said, if you don't approve this loan by end of today, we will begin paying penalties. And Mr. Museveni called his MPs. As usual, they came and said, your hands are tied as Parliament. We have already committed you. And Pineti will deliver the specialized hospital in 48 months. We are not talking about 7 years later. When they brought Magora, this one of a pharmaceutical. Day.
Wait a minute. What's her name? Pineti was given 3 other roads, which he has never delivered.
And these are, because you see, the president has given evidence against himself. He said in Kololo that even people who go to see him, now there is a fee his handlers are charging. All the major contracts in this country, all the major contracts are personally given out by Museveni. and he will call the NRM MPs. That's why the chairperson of the committee on budget, you made him, he's a very good guy, Isiagi. When they brought back the budget, and he had to explain that this money we are being asked to reinstate was meant to do the following. Parliament was almost rioting, but he made the conclusion that was very funny. He said, but we want one planning so money can go where the president wants. So the pressure is by Museveni because he personally processes all the major contracts in the country. And in most cases, they come to Parliament when they have already committed and blackmail everybody that if you don't do this, then you're in trouble.
Is this the same, and we're wrapping up, is this the same president who wrote, I think in 2017, rejecting a number of loans and saying, this one I reject, this one I reject, the whole list, that letter that was circulating over the last few weeks?
But do you know Museveni? And you should know. Museveni can even deny his name.
But
all these loans are loans that went through cabinet, which he chairs.
Gentlemen,
they came to Parliament.
Our time is out. Our time is out. We need to get out. So,
and then he says, I have never seen them. But someone who chairs cabinet.
For the panelists, we're wrapping up.
All sittings of cabinet.
He delegates where decisions are made, he chairs.
Edgar, I'm afraid we're wrapping up, so I want to give Honorable Dombo to say something in closing. Let me just take a message from Pastor Mugabe Paul. He's tweeted this on X and says, there is nothing like leaderless protests. Who chose the dates? Who came up with the idea? And a leaderless can't be good for leadership at any time in the world. If people can't own small responsibilities, like calling people together to say no to corruption, where does this leave us? You make your conclusion.
That's the same thing we had already observed. Charles, when the Constitution was made and it separated powers and gave powers to Parliament to do their work, pressure from government or from cabinet will not be an excuse for Parliament failing to do their work. Because when we were in Parliament with Honorable Salam Musumba at that time, it was the same President Museveni. It was the Parliament of Uganda. But was different.
You can allow him to
but it was
yeah, but let him not forget.
But it was different.
That you guys
it was
said don't sell UCB and he sold it.
But it was different. Well, we approved it eventually.
No.
We did. They brought a resolution and we made a resolution. But one of the things is that let Parliament do the work that they are supposed to do. When the executive decided to go for an introspection, it was its own volition of the leaders after finding out what the young people are complaining about and the people of Uganda and the failure to deliver on the services and on the mandate that the government is supposed to do. So, I'm happy about the resolutions that were made and the hard questions that were asked within the retreat. And the young people, because the young people don't know that some of these hard questions were asked and that government has pledged to take action. And hopefully when the cabinet goes back for the next retreat, I don't know after how many months or years, we must get a follow-up to find out, since that time, how many loans have been procured, all those that were non-performing, what is happening to ensure that the intended services, the population is benefiting. Those who have the responsibility to fight against corruption, let them do their work.
I have only about 3 minutes. So, Edgar, can you come in? And then I'll come to Honorable Salam and Honorable Semujungande.
The state has to respond to, we gotta develop responsiveness to the needs, to the plight of the Gen Z. What defines their plight is markedly different from what is emerging from the discourse in the public arena. They want increased access to cheap money, affordable credit. They want affordable costs of transport, logistics. They want to have debt-free lives. They want to have
jobs.
Not just jobs. You know, government is concentrating so much on big industrial parks, and some of them might turn white elephants. Many of the industrial parks that we are constructing or we are setting up have had foreigners It is good to have foreign direct investment, but the industrial parks that we are creating, the amenities and infrastructure that we are creating there is not designed for particularly the small-scale enterprises. The younger people need more of cottage industry that can absorb hordes and the multitudes of them.
Thank you.
They want cheaper access to the internet, faster internet. You and I both come from Fort Portal. We need a fast train from Fort Portal to Kampala so that we live in Fort Portal and be able to come and execute business in Kampala. We shouldn't be living in this concrete jungle that Kampala has turned out to be.
We're building our own city. So
and these young people are seeing what is happening in the neighborhood. They've seen highways being constructed in Kenya, express highways. They've seen speed trains. They saw Tanzania execute a rail project between Dar es Salaam and Dodoma. They're also building another standard gauge
maybe for another day. Maybe for another day. Isn't the cries in Kenya from the government and that finance bill that caused all the chaos to say, yes, we have built this shiny infrastructure, but we're sinking in debt?
Charles,
how do you deal with it?
Charles, the difference in votes between Raila and Ruto was only 248,000 people.
Yes.
Votes. It was evenly divided as a country. He campaigned and won his election on populism. He was bound to end the way he is ended.
Well, he's brought in Raila people
exactly.
in his new cabinet.
He had to
Honorable
do
Salam Musumba, your closing
Those are
remark.
the conditions in which he was operating, which are different from Uganda.
Honorable Salam Musumba, if you could allow me
Yes.
to frame, as you give your concluding remark, how does Parliament move forward with all this attention and all this verification, as justified as it may be? How does it move forward?
It's really in a jam. It's so entangled in many things. But I thought that it would be good if they invited the former commissioners to help them unpack the issues that they don't seem to be having the capacity to deal with. Two, they must understand that they're serving the people of Uganda. They are not serving themselves. And the office of the Speaker must also understand that they're only first among equals. Their relationship is so disjointed, it's so crappy, that the Speaker has this undue authority over everybody. I would never be in that parliament. I would never give anybody rest in a relationship like that, because they are equally elected like everybody else. So they must realize that they are only first among equals and treat their colleagues with respect. I hear people go kneeling in that office of the Speaker.
We hear the rumor there has not been evidence of it.
I know better. I know better. I know better. I know better. I don't talk for nothing. And so this relationship that has gone out of sync needs to be repaired. And they need help. If they can't help themselves, they know who to ask.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable Samuel Junganda, your last word on this. How do you actually move forward, you as Parliament?
Not just Parliament. I think we need to reconstruct the whole leadership. Because, I mean, when you have a president who goes out of his way to bribe MPs to change the constitution for him to stay in power, and his relationship is a relationship of a merchant and traders, and that's what he has cultivated. We will need to reconstruct politics, get the right people. The point he speaks about of Ron, when they were in a retreat, we've borrowed money. We now have 18 trillion shilling that we are not using. But we pay 443 billion shilling in commitment fees. The levels of competence, because the president is more comfortable, as he has already said during campaigns, with the incompetent people as long as they vote for NRM.
I see Mr. Ronald in Kasusu actually sending a message on the same, just exactly what you're saying.
And he has replicated that, because you see, if you want incompetent people in politics, you will not be motivated to look for competent people in the public service. So we need the reconstruction of the state. Kenya has tried. They even subject people to some of the appointments to public interviews. They may not give you results all the time, but they create a culture that I will go to an office because I am the most competent, I compete and win. And I think we need a reconstruction from Parliament. The late Oranya kept speaking about it. I have observed it myself. The quality of Parliament itself, if you compare the 6th Parliament, the 7 with this one, sometimes it's like you are in a sub-county council meeting with MPs. And that's why for me I enjoy teasing them. People who don't read, even when they read, they don't understand. Even the mentality that many of us have. I had a discussion with colleagues this morning. The biggest motivation by all of us MPs, nearly all of us, is to win a parliamentary seat and earn a salary. Nothing beyond that. If that is the motivation, you don't think about the country, you don't think about anything, you're only thinking about winning and earning a salary. So what value are you adding to the country?
And then what? When you are
I hope we're able to reflect on those things because campaigns are on across the country. People competing, those who want to get you out of parliament and those who want to stay in parliament. The debate is on. I don't know if the issues have space, if there is thinking beyond the salary or the prestige of being called honorable, if there's thinking about what the country needs, what kind of parliament it will have. I'll take one last message from Jimmy Chiberu. I apologize to a lot of our viewers. I have so many messages. I am unable to take even a quarter of them, but I'll take this message from Jimmy Chiberu, who says, the president is in denial. The present order is unsustainable. Over 85% of Uganda's population is below 30 years. A majority of 1986 group are over 70 to 80 years plus and constitute less than 3% of the population. Militancy cannot solve what are essentially injustice, inequality, or political and economic issues. Tales of past political skirmishes do not apply to the issues of basic survival and indignity. The population, specifically Gen Zs, want to see high-quality service delivery, zero tolerance to corruption cases, decent jobs, allocated fairly, not by connections in government. NRM, or First Family, incarcerating and torturing youth for their political choices or for speaking out their frustrations will only radicalize a generation with nothing to lose, not even their lives. It's time to put guns aside, listen, engage, and most of all, the nation to move on and experience free change in leadership. Rejecting change is like blocking the alimentary canal. We got to bring this show to an end, and I'd like to thank you, the panel, Edgar, the Honorable Manuel Dombo, the Honorable Salam Musumba, the Honorable Semuju Nganda, and to you all our viewers for joining us this evening and always, and for sharing feedback with us, and even the comments, like I said at the beginning, that you post on X about whether it is the composition of the panel or anything else. We pick them up and we value them and we respond to them. But it also means that you're actually watching the show, even you. Yes. So I'd like to thank you for that and thank the production crew that delivers the show to you. From me till next Thursday.
NBS Frontline.